When the researchers hit play on that 3D scan data, the room didn't go quiet because of what they saw. It went quiet because of what it meant on the screen. A slab of granite thousands of years old. And an artificial intelligence had just refused to confirm what every textbook had ever taught. I've cross-checked this against every tool. Signature I have. This doesn't match hand tools. It doesn't even come close. That was Grok's answer when asked to analyze the cuts carved into the granite at the Aswan Quarry, Egypt. No one in the room spoke for several seconds. Because if that machine was right, the marks etched into that stone could not have been made by the people history insists made them. So what did it see? Stay with me, because once you notice it, you cannot unsee it. On the banks of the Nile, in southern Egypt, there is a place that has quietly haunted archaeologists for generations. They call it the Aswan Granite Quarry. At first glance, it looks like almost nothing. Enormous half-finished blocks, abandoned stone, the flat silence of the desert pressing down on everything. The kind of sight a tour group moves through in 5 minutes. But the moment you step close to the rock, that ordinary feeling dissolves. This is not soft limestone. Not crumbling sandstone. This is granite, roughly a 7 on the Mohs hardness scale. Hard enough that even with modern industrial equipment, working it is treated as a serious undertaking. Hold that fact close, because everything that follows leans on it. Now look at what is actually carved into that granite. Long, sweeping curved cuts, near perfect spacing, as though something rolled across the surface in one smooth, unbroken motion. No jagged breaks, no scattered chaos, none of the uneven, stuttering mess a tired human hand always leaves behind. Almost everyone who sees them for the first time reacts the same way. They lean in, go quiet, then ask out loud, are these really thousands of years old? Because at first sight they look exactly like the product of a modern machine. And that gut instinct that something here does not belong is precisely where this mystery cracks open. For a very long time the history books offered one steady, comfortable answer. The ancient Egyptians, they said, used no mysterious technology on this stone. They used dolerite, a brutally hard rock shaped into heavy balls and hammers. Workers pounded the granite, hour after hour, until it slowly surrendered its shape. The scale of it is genuinely staggering. Khufu's pyramid rises nearly as high as a 50-story building. Historians estimate tens of thousands of laborers, figures often settling around 20,000, rotating through overlapping shifts so the work never stopped. The labor was described as merciless. Men striking stone for close to 12 hours a day, for months, sometimes years, before a single large block came free. On paper, the theory holds together. Enough people, enough time, even the impossible starts to look reachable. The trouble only came when researchers stopped debating the theory and decided to actually test it. They rebuilt the pounding tools the textbooks describe. They brought in strong, skilled craftsmen, and they struck large granite blocks thousands of times, exactly the way the mainstream story lays out. The result did not match expectations. The marks the hammers left were rough, uneven. Some bites cut deep, others barely scratched the surface. Every blow landed differently. There was no clean spacing, no graceful curve, just the honest mess of human effort. The harder we worked, the messier it got, one of the craftsmen said afterward. They had set out to confirm the textbook. Instead, they quietly disproved the one part everyone had assumed was settled. Now set that result beside the real cuts at Aswan. The contrast is almost violent. The real cuts look as though a tool moved across the stone in one steady direction at one constant speed. The body has limits. People tire, the angle of every swing drifts. At Aswan, that ordinary human inconsistency is almost nowhere to be found. This is exactly where the old story and the stone stop agreeing. When researchers accepted that the standard theory could not fully explain the marks, they tried something different. Instead of leaning on human opinion or inherited assumptions, they handed the entire question to an artificial intelligence and told it to judge the evidence cold, with no idea what answer anyone wanted. First, they built the data using photogrammetry. Thousands of overlapping high-resolution images, stitched into precise 3D digital models of the quarry surfaces. All of it fed into Grok's analytical system. And this part matters. The AI was never told this was Egypt, never told what tools might have been used or what conclusion to reach. Its only job was to measure patterns and compare them against thousands of tool signatures, ancient and modern, sitting in its database. It worked through 847 separate cuts, curve, arc radius, entry angle, depth, spacing, consistency across the entire field, the kind of painstaking work that would swallow a human research team for years. Then the report loaded, and one number rose above everything else. 4.3%, that's the number that stopped them. In everyday terms, it sounds like almost nothing. In engineering terms, it's close to frightening. Even a master craftsman repeating one motion will drift. With good modern hand tools, variation between 12 and 20% is considered completely normal, and here hundreds of cuts scattered through a working quarry, separated by only 4.3%. If human hands leave 12 to 22% variation, and these marks show only 4.3, who made them? And what did they use? The system ran the marks against thousands of profiles. Hand hammers, Bronze Age implements, the most advanced industrial machines operating today. The pounding stone theory failed first. Hammering is irregular by nature. 3 matches climbed to the top. First, diamond rotary cutters tools tipped with diamond abrasive, spinning at high speed, leaving clean, consistent marks even on granite. Second, water jet systems, carving stone with a high-pressure stream of water laced with abrasive particles, prized for how controlled their cuts are. Third, and to many the most unsettling, ultrasonic cutting, a blade vibrating at a frequency above human hearing, producing astonishingly precise results. What separates all three from a hammer is to just sharpness, its repeatability. A machine does tire on the 400th pass. It does shift its grip. It carves the 800th cut exactly like the first. That almost inhuman sameness is what the AI kept finding in the Aswan marks. Then Grok released its confidence score, and the room went quiet again. Confidence level, roughly 94%. Sit with that, and it flagged one more thing. Across hundreds of cuts, in different parts of the quarry, entry angle varied by less than 2 degrees. Holding that kind of consistency by hand is considered close to impossible. This is where the floor opened up beneath the scientists. Because the machines that most closely match these marks, diamond rotary systems, high-pressure water jets, ultrasonic cutters, are all products of the modern industrial age. There is no record, no fragment, no whisper of such technology in the world that supposedly built this quarry on one side. History, insisting only simple stone tools existed. On the other, an AI saying the evidence looks like the output of a controlled industrial process. The gap between those two statements is the whole story, and it's about to get wider. There's a detail at Aswan that almost no one stops to examine, and honestly it's the part that should keep you up at night. Scattered through the site are deep, narrow shafts plunging roughly 30 to 50 feet straight down. Many only 3 to 4 feet wide at the mouth. From above they look like plain holes. But study the walls inside them and the picture changes completely. Down on those shaft walls, the same curved, uniform, spiraling cuts found in the open quarry above. Same depth, same pattern, same shape, and that's exactly what troubles the people who study them, because think it through. If the old theory is correct, if this was done by swinging heavy dolerite hammers, a worker needs real room to operate. At minimum, 18 to 24 inches of clearance to draw the hammer back and bring it down with enough force to break granite. Take away that arc, you take away the speed. The entire hammer theory depends on momentum. Remove the swing, you remove the method, so the shaft isn't just an awkward workspace. It's a place where the only approved tool physically cannot do its job, and yet the job was clearly done. Barely room to stand upright, hard granite on every side, crushing tightness. And the marks on those walls are identical to the cuts in the wide-open areas above. When the shaft data went into Grok AI, the system weighed the width of the space, the angle of the cuts, the hardness of the granite, and the clearance a hammer swing demands. Then it reached a conclusion that pushed the whole debate past where anyone wanted it to go. This falls into the category of physically impossible. Given the spatial constraints, a tool requiring a backswing could not have functioned in a space that tight, but a system applying vertical force straight down from the front, with no backswing at all, could produce these same cuts, even in the narrowest corner, and that quietly removes the one method the textbooks insist was used. Everything so far had been about the surface of the stone. The next discovery came from going underneath it. Strike hard stone repeatedly with a heavy tool and the surface breaks apart. Scientists call it fracturing. Crystals crack in random directions. Edges turn rough. Fissures spread down into the material. Under magnification, hammered granite looks like a miniature battlefield. The Aswan marks looked nothing like that. Researchers found a surface that did not appear broken at all. It looked cleanly cut in technical language, a shear pattern, a sharp, deliberate boundary between the cut surface and the untouched stone beside it. It didn't look struck. It looked as though something had patiently separated the material along a chosen line. Beneath the cut, almost no damage reached into the stone below, if hammers had done this. Cracks should extend downward. Nothing of the kind was present. Then came the spirals. Under higher magnification, extremely fine rotating marks, suggesting a spinning tool had traveled across the granite while turning continuously in one direction. In samples pulled from completely different parts of the quarry, those spirals ran the same way. After that, signs of thermal alteration, tiny zones of concentrated high temperature. Not the spread of heat from two stones grinding together, heat pinned to a small rotary contact point, the fingerprint of friction beneath a fast-spinning blade. Then the particles. Microscopic grains of corundum, a 9 on the Mohs scale, used today as an industrial abrasive, and in some spots, carbon structures researchers described as having a diamond-like form. Any one detail alone you could argue about. Stacked together, they stop sounding like coincidence, they start sounding like a description of a tool, when all of it went into Grok AI together. The conclusion fit the rest of the story uncomfortably well. This is not the signature of hammers, or Bronze Age implements. The closest match is diamond abrasive rotary cutting, an industrial-grade process. Under the lens, the granite hadn't been broken, it had been machined. When researchers tried to pin down the age of the marks, the mystery didn't get clearer, it got stranger. Scattered across parts of the quarry are old paintings in red ochre, and the telling detail is this: they sit directly on top of the cutting marks. That ordering matters. The stone was cut first. Only much later did someone paint over it. If the paintings are as old as some researchers suggest, the cuts beneath them must be older, still dropping us into the pre-dynastic period. A time when, according to mainstream history, only scattered small groups lived in the region, armed with the simplest stone tools imaginable. The AI compared the geometry of the cuts against their estimated ages in what it labeled a temporal precision analysis. The result, delivered at roughly 91% confidence, ran completely backward. The older a cut appeared, the more precise and uniform it was. Moving toward the present, the cuts grew rougher, less controlled. The marks believed to be oldest looked the most perfect. The most recent ones looked like ordinary human handiwork. The relationship reached the 99th percentile of statistical significance, the report noted, extremely unlikely to be chance. Every civilization we know of improves its technology over time. Early work is crude, later work is refined. Aswan tells the opposite story: the oldest work is the finest. Skill appears to fade as the centuries pass, which raises a question almost too large to hold. What if the people at the very beginning already knew something the ones who came after them forgot? Up to now, the puzzle was how ancient people cut granite so precisely. But the AI surfaced something that deepened the question further. Whoever made these cuts did not appear to be simply working the outer surface. They seemed to have already known what was hidden inside the stone. Granite is not uniform. Inside it run different bands of minerals, harder regions, natural weak veins where the rock parts more easily. In modern quarries, crews use sonar scanning, ground surveys, and computer-based geological modeling to find these features, then plan their cutting paths to follow the lines of least resistance. Many of the old cuts at Aswan appear to follow those same natural weak zones, as though whoever made them already understood which parts of the stone were strongest and where it would yield most easily. Without any scanning equipment at all, cutting granite with the right machine is one problem. Knowing where to cut before you start is a completely different one. The outside of a granite block tells you almost nothing about the veins hidden a foot deep. We need ground-penetrating instruments to see that, to follow those internal lines by hand. Blind and land on the path of least resistance over and over would require either extraordinary luck hundreds of times in sequence, or some method of reading the inside of a rock you cannot see into. When Grok AI compared the surface mineral mapping against the cutting paths, it found a real relationship, concluding at roughly 88% confidence that the cut paths appeared chosen according to the internal structure of the stone. Some researchers have started calling it the stone reading theory, the idea that these builders held some method of understanding the hidden architecture of a rock before they ever touched it. And if that is true, it raises the next obvious question. If they were this sophisticated, why is there a giant unfinished monument lying abandoned in the middle of the site? There is one object at Aswan that makes nearly everyone ask the same thing the moment they see it. If the work was going this well, why did it stop? The unfinished obelisk, considered the largest ever attempted, still lies attached to the bedrock where it was first carved. Finished, it would have weighed more than 1,000 tons. Mainstream archaeology offers a tidy answer. A large crack appeared during the work, and the crew abandoned it. Reasonable enough, but when researchers studied it closely, the answer stopped fitting. Cutting marks continue beyond the point where the crack runs. Work appears to have continued after the fracture had already formed, if the crack were truly the reason they quit. The marks should stop right there, they don't tee, and the marks on this unfinished giant are identical to those found across the rest of Aswan, even in the lower sections, where working space narrows to almost nothing. The quality does to drop, so what actually stopped a 1,000-ton project so suddenly that no one ever came back to finish it? History offers no clear answer if this mystery stopped at a single quarry. You could file it away as a local curiosity. It does not stop there. The same marks appear at other ancient sites across Egypt. When the team ran the Aswan data against the Giza complex, specifically the Valley Temple of Khafra, one of the oldest and most baffling granite structures in the country, the same microscopic signatures appeared again. Clean boundaries, minimal internal fracturing, faint curved marks suggesting a spinning tool. The AI measured the difference between the two sites directly. Variation between Aswan and Giza, under 5%. Different locations, different blocks, nearly identical cutting method. When Grok AI combined the full dataset, it reached a conclusion at roughly 89% confidence. This doesn't look like the story of one location. It looks like the same cutting technology was in use across the entire region, and then it disappeared. A single skilled workshop you could explain away. A lucky generation of master carvers passing technique between a few hands, you could just about argue that, but the same fingerprint, showing up hundreds of kilometers apart, on different stone at different sites, separated by under 5% variation. That's not a workshop. That's a standard. The kind of consistency you only get when an entire civilization shares one method, one set of tools, and somehow that shared standard vanished from the record so completely that we spent centuries insisting it never existed. So here we are, standing in front of the question that refuses to close. If the oldest work really is the most advanced, what happens to the comfortable belief that technology only ever moves forward? That's the thread the entire field keeps tripping over. The stone hammer theory keeps failing the test. No one has reproduced marks that match what is actually carved into that quarry. The debate refuses to settle, and a lot of specialists go noticeably quiet when you press them for a clean answer. Maybe our timeline is simply incomplete. Maybe there's a missing chapter we haven't found yet. Or maybe the answer is something we're not quite ready to say out loud, whatever it is. The stone is waiting for us to catch up. The marks are still there. That 4.3% is still there, and it isn't asking history for answers anymore. It feels more like it is quietly taking them away. One cut at a time, daring someone to finally notice. So I want to hear from you after everything we just walked through. Do you think this is lost technology, a dating error, or something we don't yet have a name for? Tell me in the comments. I read them, and the most compelling theories often come from you. And if you believe history is still hiding more than it's telling, subscribe, tap the bell, so you the first one here when the next discovery refuses to stay buried.